Get ready for the event of the summer, the Northwoods Throwdown Charity Softball Game. Maine Game Wardens versus New Hampshire Game Wardens. Hadlock Field, Portland, Maine, home of the Sea Dogs. Saturday, August 3rd, gates open at 4 p.m. Meet the Game Wardens playing and be there early for all the events leading up to the game. Get your tickets soon at porttix.com. That's porttix.com. This is Game Warden Wayne Saunders, and I'll see you there. The first sponsorship on Warden's Watch is Trailrunner Wireless Internet, available in Coos County and Washington County, Maine. High-speed internet for rural areas. And they're the company I work for, other than podcasting, and I thank you for your support. This is high-speed internet for rural areas, making my podcast happen and making businesses happen in remote places, as well as bringing technology to you folks when you live out in the country. Please go to mytrailrunner.com and like the page on Facebook as well. That would help them a lot and help me to continue Warden's Watch. Guidefitter.com. Guidefitter, bridging you to the outdoors while providing a quality platform for guides and outfitters for you to select from. Guidefitter is the best place to get discounts on gear if you're an outdoor professional. As a game warden, I'm a member of the Outdoor Government Program, which has over 80 quality brands to get discounts from. It's free to join. Yes, free to join. And all you need to do is prove that you're an active outdoor government employee. There are all kinds of products available. Apparel, boots, archery equipment, optics, backpacks, cameras, watches, ammo, anything, you name it. And while you're there, check out the articles, information, and stories that you'll be inspired from. So before you head out to work in the outdoors or start your next outdoor adventure, check out guidefitter.com and get discounts on your everyday or every so often outdoor equipment. This is Game Warden Wayne Saunders for Guidefitter. Wish you could fish more, anywhere, anytime. RODgeeks, a St. Croix Rods partner, has developed a 42-inch one-piece travel rod designed and built with the same technology found in St. Croix Rods. This travel rod is offered as a kit that comes with the RG42 rod, spinning reel, fishing line, pliers, and tackle tray. All in a case with space for your wallet, phone, and fishing license. Just grab and go. Perfect to keep in your pickup, car, or RV. This shorty performs much like a longer rod, but is compact enough for easy storage and for on-the-go use. Make this the summer you fish more. RODgeeks.com. Please join me, Game Warden Wayne Saunders, and other Game Wardens on our adventures, protecting wildlife, saving lives, and having fun, all while serving the public and the natural resources of our planet. Listen to the tales and experiences of those who work in the outdoors while being entertained with stories about encounters with poachers, wildlife investigation, murder investigation, near-death experiences, search and rescue missions, wildlife interactions from game wardens around the country and around the world. When I retired, I realized I couldn't let go of that legacy, but rather wanted to share the passion, the commitment, and the stories of those men and women that call themselves game wardens. This is Game Warden Wayne Saunders, and this is Warden's Watch. Welcome to Episode 8, and we are live from the Maine Moose Lottery here in Scarborough, Maine at Cabelas. This is a live event, so you're going to hear background noise all the way through my podcast with Sgt Aaron Cross of the Maine Warden Service. This is an exciting event, and my first live event, so we had some ups and downs, some things that didn't go right, some things that went right, and the big thing that went right is I was able to do 2 podcasts while I was there. You're going to hear the excitement of the Maine Moose Festival, Moose Lottery drawing here at Cabelas, and Cabelas did a great job. They pulled out all the plugs for this. They have vendors everywhere. They have 2 podcasters, myself, Game Warden Wayne Saunders, Hal Blood's here doing a live podcast. It's exciting, and they made it exciting, and when people get drawn that are actually here for a Maine moose hunting experience, you can hear the celebration. It is an exciting thing to be part of. And I'm so happy I was invited here, and the live podcasts are just another layer to this onion that we've been peeling. So in podcasting, we're getting to know the wardens. We're right beside the main Operation Game Thief trailer that shows the reasons why law enforcement in fishing game is so important, why protecting this resource is so important. And they bring those walls of shame around to show people what people have poached. And it's not the little animals, it's the big animals. So you can see that sometimes, see an Operation Game Thief trailer near you. A lot of states have them. A lot of states don't. International Wildlife Crime Stoppers does grants so states can upgrade so they can get their own trailers. There's a lot of International Wildlife Crime Stoppers do. You're going to hear Greg Serpis talk about that in our bonus round that's going to be released next week. Happy to be here with Sgt Aaron Cross, this live event. We're going to continue on with Warden's Watch. If you could share with your friends, subscribe to the Warden's Watch, the more downloads, the better off we are, the more sharing with like-minded people, the more people that want to have that game warden experience and hear the stories of these brave men and women. Pretty exciting for me, and it's exciting for me to be here in Maine, in Scarborough at Cabelas for the Maine Moose Lottery drawing. Thank you for listening. So my guest is Sgt Aaron Cross from the Maine Warden Service. Grew up in the Belfast area, that's like mid-coast Maine. Went to Unity College, and you didn't finish Unity College, did you?
No, I got hired prior to finishing. I kind of had to make that decision, and it was looking back, it was a good decision for me.
Yeah.
We've actually already talked to some people here at the Moose Lottery, asking questions about family members that are maybe in college now, wondering what their best option or what they should do, kind of looking for some advice. And I think it's a personal choice that you have to make.
Absolutely.
And for me personally, it worked out. But education and getting as much of experience as you can beforehand is always you can't lose in that either.
No, you can't lose. Absolutely. So, and there's different ways. With New Hampshire, it's you can get 2 years police experience, 2 years military, which I don't think they do 2 years military anymore. And then you can get in. Your hiring process is open now, isn't it?
It is. Yeah, we're actually we opened our full-time hiring process a couple weeks ago. We're gonna keep that open for a little bit, probably for another month or so. So, I mean, if you're at that point in your life and in your where you can actually apply right now, then now's the time. But in the next few years, we're going to have a lot of opportunity in our state, probably much like a lot of other states, where there's going to be some vacancies, some retirements that happen, and if you're looking at a career in conservation law enforcement, I think right now is a great time to be preparing yourself, getting some experience, trying to ride with a warden if possible. Do those things that will prepare you the best and to be the best candidate when the time comes.
Right. And get some Whitewater experience. Is that in there too?
Yeah, I guess. I mean, I one of my jobs a while back was to kind of oversee the Whitewater rafting in Maine, and that was kind of interesting because it's something that I actually kind of had a personal interest in. I guess I not so much specifically rafting, but just whitewater in general. I did a lot of canoeing growing up and things. So when that opportunity came up, I thought it'd be kind of neat to get that experience as a warden. And
had you ever done that before?
I'd rafted before, yeah,
okay.
A couple times, but
taking the rafting trip down.
Yeah, just kind of recreationally doing that kind of thing. And so the job that I did kind of entails the more the commercial aspect of the whitewater rafting industry, but you're on the rivers as well. So it was kind of a good combination of both, and you get some kind of neat experiences on both sides.
Yeah, no, I would imagine that's really good. And the training you had to take prior to, did you do like Rescue 3 training or?
So actually one really kind of neat thing that came out of that role when I was doing it is that we kind of identified that as an agency we didn't really have a protocol for any kind of swiftwater training, more advanced swiftwater training. So we actually implemented, so every new game warden during their warden school goes through a swiftwater rescue training program now during their warden school. So every new game warden since 2011 or 12 has gone through swiftwater training.
Nice.
So we're actually hitting quite the majority of our agency now, and it's good because there's so many, not just in the rafting world, but there's so many areas of the state, depending on water levels and seasons and things like that could potentially be a hazardous situation that guys, having a comfort level in that is really important.
Yeah, and we're seeing that all the way across the country right now with flooding and everything. So, and knowing water, reading water, and in any situation is pretty important.
Yeah, no question. I mean, there's some crazy things that are happening across the country, and I mean, we're not really exempt from it here in the state either. in the springtime we typically have rivers that are at or above flood stage, and they're very, very dangerous. So combined with the coldness of the winter melt, spring runoff type situation, and the high water, it's we need to have some sort of background in that.
Right. No, absolutely. I would agree. So, family.
Yeah.
You're married?
Yeah, married. I've been married to my wife for 8 years now, I guess, almost 8 years. 8 years this month.
And you met her when you were a game warden?
Yeah. So we met kind of, her dad was actually is a retired game warden. He was a sergeant in Washington County, which is what people refer to, I guess, as the down east portion of the state. And basically we kind of met through work, I guess, and we've started a family of our own, and it's been great.
Now, you kind of told me in our pre-interview there that she kind of tricked you into a kind of a date, so to speak, or an introduction, right?
Yeah.
Or is that how she would say it?
Well, she's probably listening to this, so I'm gonna try to make this work out for myself here a little bit. But
wise man.
Yeah. No, we joke about it now. It's kind of funny. The premise, I guess, of our meeting and our conversation started about questions in purchasing a canoe and things like that. And I'm not sure if everyone's listening here or not. They're listening to my marriage story, but anyways, and so we started talking based on that, and 8 years later, or 9 years later now, I still haven't bought her a canoe, and she gives me a hard time about that, but I kind of come back usually with, well, we have 4 kids, and I thought that would kind of be the same thing.
That's a big canoe.
It's different. Now we need a bigger canoe.
Yeah, exactly. Definitely.
So that's the story that I'm going to go with today, and hopefully.
And you kind of took her dad's place, didn't you?
Yeah. So. Her dad retired, and I think he actually retired in 2015, and they opened up the promotional process in 16 for the sergeant's position down in Washington County, and I ended up getting promoted to that position. So I spent about a year and a half down there, and living with them, and going back and forth on my days that I could go home, and made it work. So.
Yep, and if everybody's just joining us now, we are live at Cabelas in Scarborough, Maine for the Moose Lottery event. It's going to be a big deal here today. They're having moose calling contests. They're going to be drawing the names live for about 2,000 Maine moose permits. We're set up right near the Operation Game Thief trailer. We are live on the IWC, working, as a game warden. You talk about the section, and I had this experience too, of the people that you worked with were kind of your mentors and stuff. And I know where I landed as a game warden. I landed in an awesome place with a lot of awesome wardens that taught me how to be a game warden. So, and it sounds like you had a similar experience.
Yeah, I think that one of the most important things that a new warden that just got hired could really get is to be surrounded by positive, hardworking guys, and I was lucky enough to have that happen when I got hired. I think that those first couple years that you're out working in the field, you kind of develop how you're going to interact with people and what kind of work you're going to do. And so I was able to see that firsthand, get thrown into a lot of situations that made me, learn things that I didn't know. And I think that overall down the road, you look back at those things, and I think that's a huge thing to get set on the right foot first, to begin with. And we had a supervisor in the section that was a really important kind of a mentor to a lot of us newer guys. And it was kind of interesting when I got hired with that the district that I went to. The district next door to mine was another guy that was in my academy class. So, and we had grown a friendship throughout the academy and things like that. So it was kind of neat to be side by side. But we both worked for the same supervisor, and we had a lot of fun when we got out into the field. And it was a good way to start.
Yeah, no doubt. And that sounds great. And was that the supervisor? We're talking about Chris, aren't we?
We are, yeah.
Chris Simmons, and we're going to end up talking to him sooner or later because
he won't hide forever on
he's
that.
got so much energy, and so it's an infection too. It's awesome to be around him because he gets you all fired up.
That's right.
So, and I'm usually fired up, and he gets me more fired up. So
it's a good combination.
And I can't keep up with him. So I'm looking forward to that interview too. So, and he's in charge of the Operation Game Safe, the liaison with the state into the nonprofit.
Yeah. So Chris is kind of he's been the liaison for OGT for a long time now. He asked me to kind of come on and help a little bit back when I was a pretty new guy, and it was. I really took to it, and I really liked it and enjoyed helping with that. So him and I are both, kind of help with OGT and also are pretty active in the wildlife crime stoppers arena as well. And, it's something that I think we both, really have a passion for, the mission of both organizations, Maine OGT and International Wildlife Crime Stoppers, and see the value and I mean, those organizations are really promoting or trying to promote exactly what we do for our careers, and what we've dedicated a lot of time and hours and good times, bad times too. So, I mean, to me, it's only natural that we'd be really active and involved in that.
Absolutely. So, and that you got some stories down here that because being game wardens, that's what, when I'm sitting at a camp or something, they always want to hear the game warden stories, and that's what I think a lot of people like to hear. And these brothers you catch ice fishing, just turns into.
I mean, it's so hard to think and try to put all these stories and ideas and thoughts into an interview like this, because there's so many things and you'll forget them.
And you keep thinking of more as you go.
There's a lot of. One of the things I like about being a game warden is that there's a lot of good things, there's some bad things, there's some tough things, but there's a lot of stories that you kind of look back at and say, that was pretty funny. May not have been as funny at the time, but as time goes on, they become sometimes funnier and funnier. So, I mean, we see kind of a little bit of everything. You see tons of different types of people, and a lot of people that you deal with, especially in an area where you've worked for a while, are people that you've dealt with in the past. We call them a few different things, but frequent flyers is one common term that we use. So a couple brothers, I like I said before, I had the Unity District for a while, and really my only big body of water was Unity Pond. And so I was out on ice fishing patrol one day in the wintertime, and I see this group of people, fishing out in the middle of the pond. So kind of roll up to them and basically just start talking to them. And I recognized all of them just from, past interactions. And I was pretty confident that there was two brothers there, and I was pretty confident that one of the brothers had an arrest warrant that had been issued for him for something. I don't remember
because
what.
they are frequent flyers.
They are frequent flyers, but the thing about them is that they're pretty good-natured. So I got on the phone and found out through dispatch that it confirmed my suspicion that he did have a warrant. So while I was on the phone, though, I looked over at his brother and I figured, what the heck, I might as well ask him while I'm on the phone just to save me another phone call. So I kind of yelled over my phone to the other brother, asking him if he had a warrant as well. And he just hung his head and said yes. So kind of like, you got me. And so I confirmed that one as well. So I hung up with dispatch and basically had to make a plan. Now I'm in the middle of a pond with two guys that have arrest warrants that need to go to jail, but I'm on a snowmobile. So, like I said before, they're good-natured guys, and I basically made an agreement that they would walk in front of my snowmobile and I'd just follow them to shore. So they did, and they. So
you got two guys walking in front of you, and you're just poking along
at slow
behind
speed
the
on a snowmobile. And in the meantime, I had to call the sheriff's department to get a couple deputies there to transport them because I am on a snowmobile. So we're walking towards the shoreline, and we get closer, and two deputies arrive at on this camp road. And at the time, they were transitioning at the sheriff's department into different cruisers, and one of the deputies had a brand new Dodge Charger, and nice, sharp-looking car, and the other one was kind of the old style, Crown Victoria type police vehicle. And so I got off a snowmobile and I was walking towards shore with them, and the conversation quickly turned to kind of bickering, like a sibling bickering session, because they were fighting over who was going to ride in the new cruiser. And I thought it was just comical that their biggest concern, I guess, at that point in time was which one was going to get to ride to Belfast.
It wasn't about the arrest.
No,
it wasn't about
really
the
care
warrants.
about that.
It was about who gets the new cruiser.
Yeah, so we kind of made a joke out of it, and I don't remember who won, but they both ended up going to jail, and again, just that story just is one in many that you can illustrate that a lot of the people that we deal with typically are decent people, and it really boils down to, people make mistakes, they get into jams and into trouble, but if you treat people good, if you treat them the right way, in the long run, I think it pays off, and I think you're a more effective game warden by treating people the right way. So.
Absolutely, and that's a reputation you can get too that makes it easier dealing with other people and along the road too.
Yeah,
So.
I mean, we all have stories about how that relationship or how your attitude has positively impacted situations, and I think that game wardens, I can speak for guys in Maine at least, that a lot of times we you think about community policing and that terminology. I can't think of another job or profession where community policing is more important than being a game warden. So, a lot of other agencies, at least in our state, we work really close and well together. But a lot of times we have relationships with people out in the field that they may not achieve in their roles. So, it's kind of it's an interesting thing for sure.
Yeah. No, it's almost like a small OGT when you become part of the community, because people will call you because they have your phone number, they know your family. So,
right.
Ever write tickets or arrest your family members?
I haven't.
And I probably should have asked you that first. So.
No, that's okay. That's a fair question, especially in Maine. But
I've got two uncles, Lori's uncles, my wife's uncles. So
actually, again, this is I've dealt with one distant cousin that I can think of that I actually ended up having a trial with, believe it or not. So. It was a snowmobile issue, a criminal trespass type thing, and basically he didn't agree with what I had for evidence and what I knew. So, anyways, we ended up in a trial, and I won, and it was just kind of I don't know, disheartening, I guess, that relatives had to go to a trial but that's okay.
Yep.
I'm from a big family, so I'm actually surprised that I haven't had more interactions with family members. But
my wife is too. So,
but I am
a big
lucky.
family in a small town.
Yeah, that's the thing. But I am lucky. I have a great family and super supportive, and that's something that I've from day one. That's never been a consideration for me. I mean, we have oral board questions that talk about dealing with a family member in a violation and things like that. And I remember in my oral board when I got hired what I said on that question. And the first thing I said, and then I had to obviously explain myself more, but was I would hope that my whatever that relative was wouldn't put me in that position. And I know they wouldn't because I know my family. And so that's been a great thing too. Yeah. I mean, I work in the same area that I grew up in now. So I do know a lot.
So the
of people.
potential is there.
The potential's there for sure.
Mm-hmm.
It's more just acquaintances and people that you knew in high school that you're dealing with. But
yeah, and sometimes it's easier to deal with them too because you can call them by their first name.
No question. I just had this conversation with someone else the other day that I think it's actually a benefit in a lot of ways to know the people in your even if knowing them, knowing their background. Knowing how families are connected, things like that.
I think you're right. It's an asset as a game warden.
Sure.
So, no doubt. And I think days of old, they used to not put you in your local area. Maybe to start, you could eventually get back there if that's where you wanted to go. So
yeah, and I think there's value in that as well, and it just depends on the person.
Absolutely. But when you get back there, you're right. You know the players. You've got that edge that nobody else has.
Right.
So, and you're very family orientated. That's one thing I can see about you. And I asked Aaron for a picture of him, and he sends me a picture of him and is it your youngest daughter?
No, that's my that's number 2 daughter.
That's number
that's my
2,
second oldest.
And it's class of 2032.
Yeah, so she had pre-K graduation the other day. So
wow,
they do a lot of graduations now, evidently. All the way up through.
You're going to be a busy man.
Yeah, so they so they had this picture, this poster that they could hold up that says class of 2032, and one of my academy classmates pointed out on the internet that 2032 is actually the year that him and I can retire from Warden Service. So we thought that was kind of funny.
That is funny.
But anyways, it seems like so far away, but it really isn't in a lot of ways.
Right. It will blink and it'll be here. But that's just cracks me up. And it just goes to show that you're a good family man. And I appreciated that picture. It made me laugh right away.
Good.
I'm sure it's going to make a lot of other people laugh because, class of 2032. So getting back to some of these violations, man, I got to tell you, I've never heard about night hunting a beaver.
Yeah, so that's an interesting one too, and I hadn't either. So, and I really didn't. It was
deer, moose, never a beaver.
So just like a lot of cases that we deal with, usually get a little piece of information from someone, and sometimes it's accurate, sometimes it's not. But you kind of have to build a case from maybe sometimes just a small piece of info. So I had gotten it was the rumor around town that a couple students had been night hunting for ducks, shooting after legal shooting for migratory birds, which in the fall in an area where there's quite a bit of duck hunting activity was pretty believable. So I started digging into it and tried to acquire some names, locations, things like that, and kind of honed in on who I thought it might be. So we went and interviewed the suspect, and we basically kind of laid it out, what the info was that we had and what we thought was probably going on. And he kept adamantly denying, just deny. And he was very, very convincing. Like he did not shoot at ducks after legal shooting time. So that was the initial interview. I got back in the truck with another warden, and I'm thinking, man, he's convincing. Like I don't know where else to go with this interview. So we gave it a couple days, and I got back and got back in touch with him, and I met him again and interviewed him again, and I kept hammering him on this duck hunting thing, and he kept telling me, I was wrong, and so finally I got really frustrated, and I kind of just stood there and didn't talk, and after a minute or so, you could tell by his body language that he was kind of breaking down a little bit, and he hung his head and he goes, "Do you want me to tell you the truth?" And I said, "Well," I wanted you to tell me the truth like 3 or 4 days ago, but yeah, this would be a great time. And so he hangs his head and he says, "I actually shot a beaver at night." And it kind of caught me off guard, and I'm thinking, that's the last thing I expected to hear from this kid. So he ran me through the story, and he was duck hunting. They had been duck hunting that day, and they saw a beaver as they were coming back at night and shot it off the bank of the river. So now I'm thinking, I've never written a night hunting beaver ticket, and
I'm assuming your statute says wildlife.
Yeah. So you can't night hunt.
That includes coyotes, beavers.
Yeah.
The only exceptions would be raccoons that I can think of.
Exactly, and coyotes in certain times of the year.
Absolutely.
And so, anyways, that was the one and only, and probably the only one I'll ever have is a beaver night hunting case. And
that's the first one I've heard of, Aaron. So that's
it was a joke for quite a while.
I bet that poor kid had dead beavers showing up everywhere.
I suspect his friends too gave him a pretty hard time.
Yeah,
that's okay.
Probably one of his nicknames went on to be Mr. Beaver.
It very well like could
that.
have.
So
yes, it very well could have.
And you lost a decoy. That's what we got to notice. It's a disappearing decoy.
Yeah. So I'm glad I thought of that one when we were talking the other day, because it didn't come to me for a while, but it was one of those, obviously in the fall, one of our big priorities is working night hunting activity, more specifically for deer hunting, typically. We spend a lot of time at night trying to catch people that are, killing stuff illegally. So one night, the guy that was in the next door district to me, him and I went and we found a place that historically there'd been some night hunting activity. We'd never personally worked there yet, so we thought, we'll try it and see what happens. So we set up, our decoy in the field and got our spot. We tucked away in the truck, and it was a really cold night. It was towards the end of November, so we got lazy for the most part. That's what I'm going to say. And we sat in the truck, and typically we don't both sit in the vehicle. We kind of try to spread out a little bit. We were sitting in the truck, and we were talking, and trying to pass the time throughout the night. So we get to the point where it was, pretty late. So we got to the point in the night where it was still pretty late. We were kind of getting tired, so we decided to call it a night. And so we drive down towards where the decoy had been set up, and we get out and we start walking across the field, and we both knew where we set the decoy up. I mean, it was pretty obvious where we did. We're both looking at a distance and can't see the decoy anywhere. And I'm thinking, and we had one vehicle all night, and both of us looked at each other and thinking, there's no way. Like, did these guys take that deer? I mean, it's the only thing we could think of. There's no other possible explanation. Yeah. The deer's gone. So we're in a. It's
like a shock factor too. You roll back into,
especially
to pick
being
up the
brand new,
and you just lost a decoy.
Yeah, I was just thinking about what.
How do you explain that one, Aaron?
Yeah, not good.
Yeah,
not
the
good.
new guy showed up to tell me he lost a decoy. I'd be like,
so we're both really nervous at this point. So we kind of high stepped it down there to where we thought it was, and as we got closer, the deer had fallen in the tall grass. So it really, the climax to the story isn't great, but the initial, oh my word, the deer
lost a decoy.
Gone. Yeah, we call it disappearing deer because it's like, and not to mention the fact that we don't really know how long it was down for, so we could have spent all night looking at
You could have spent all night there, and yeah.
So we learned that, every time you deal with something, every time you work a case or work a detail, you kind of learn things that you may not do the next time. So
no doubt, and you never know. Just like this podcast, we've had technical issues coming up. So, but I was at a restaurant the other night, and this farmer that I know shows up, and he's laughing and joking, and we talk about the time he locked me in his fields.
Oh,
so
yeah.
We had actually got there at 2:00 in the morning. It was moose season, and there was some moose hanging out off this back road way in the back, and one of our notorious people that we got routinely had been there every day because he had a moose permit every day like clockwork prior to legal shooting. So we have moose decoys, so we set up a moose decoy for him. He didn't show up that day. It was really strange, but he'd been clockwork. So I go out to leave the area, and we get out to the gate, and the gate's locked. We're locked in.
It's tough for business.
It's very tough for business, and it happened to be this opening day of Youth Day. So the farmer came in, probably 2 hours before legal shooting, or maybe an hour, and he locked the gate so no one could go in there and bug him while he was youth hunting on the way back. And so, but the guy we were after couldn't get in there either, and so we were all set up again, like you said, for hours, waiting that prime time. And the farmer locked me in, and then I had to bolt cut his lock off. So I showed up at the farm 2 days later and said, with a lock, and I said, yeah, you lost the lockdown, and he was blaming the poacher. So
oh yeah, of course.
and I'm like, no.
Yeah, and it's so funny when you start thinking about these things that you learn over time and ways to work different things. I remember the first night hunter that I caught as a game warden was kind of like a grand slam, if you will, of all these different things all piled into one case, and I learned a valuable lesson that night of kind of along the same lines as the first night hunting situation of always having a wheelman when you're working night hunting activity, because you never know, some of these people will decide that it's in their best interest, or they may think it is, to try to take off and get away if they do something like that. And that's what this, particular person did. He shot our decoy, and he didn't wait very long, and he took off. And it's kind of a unique story because he was actually in a minivan, and since then I've never caught a night hunter in a minivan. But
what a great utility vehicle to night hunt.
It was absolutely great. We'd been sitting there for probably 2-3 hours, and we had back and forth traffic, but fast. It was nothing that looked like hunting type traffic. And all of a sudden, I can hear it coming, and I can see it from a ways, and I can tell it's a minivan. And I looked at the warden that was working with me, and I said, "Yep, it's another blank minivan." And we both kind of said, "Whatever, And it happened so quick. He pulled up. He almost slammed the brakes on, sticks a rifle out the window, shoots at our decoy, and we try to stop him on foot, and he takes off. So now the chase is on. I get back to my truck first, and I get out on the road, and I'm chasing a minivan, down these windy back roads that all I can see is basically the dust when he comes around a corner. And I really don't know what I'm chasing at this point except for a vehicle that just shot the decoy. And so, a couple 3 miles down the road, he makes the mistake of actually pulling into a dooryard. And it wasn't his, it was just some random dooryard that he pulled into. And I can see him there, so basically caught him, and his girlfriend was in the car. And he ended up being a felon, a convicted felon as well. So he had, during the chase, unbeknownst to me because I couldn't see it, he'd actually thrown the rifle. It was a little .22 Magnum rifle. He'd thrown it out the window. So when I caught him, he didn't have the gun. So through the interview, we determined that he'd pitched it out the window. He actually took us back to where he thought he did, and sure enough, it was stuck right in the mud like a javelin.
Wow.
So we got the gun back, and we ended up at his house that night, seizing several other guns. So anyways, that was my first night hunting case ever.
That was a good one.
Yeah, it was kind of like a grand slam, but at the same time learned some lessons too. And
it's definitely learned some lessons. So and checking the gun out the window, that was pretty.
Yeah, that's kind of unique. I mean, not everyone
unique.
does that, but I guess if you're a felon, you're not supposed to have it.
Exactly. That's the last thing you want. You check it out. A .22 Magnum, that would be a poacher's choice.
Oh, it is. It's kind of what we jokingly refer to as a kind of the poacher's rifle, is a 22 Magnum. So
no, absolutely. So and the fishing isn't the real exciting thing, but being a game warden, watching fishermen and over limits, and sometimes you had a case. You put a lot of time and effort into a fishing case, which I like to see. And I forget about the fishing side of being a game warden, because that puts a lot of time and a lot of hours into. I mean, we spend a lot of time and hours, dealing with fishermen, and then protecting fish too. Yeah. So
I mean,
and you did too.
Yeah. So I mean, we try to really teach game wardens in our warden school the importance of surveillance and being patient as a game warden, because most of our cases that we deal with are things that you start. We do get information, and Maine OGT is great for that, but at the same time, there's a lot of things that go on out there that you have to actually physically be there and see. And fishing is probably the number one thing that we deal with that you do the most surveillance on. So, depending on where you are in our state, there's some places where they're just absolutely beautiful cold water fisheries, native trout populations, things like that. And when I first started, part of my district had the Kennebec River, and the Kennebec is a pretty notorious river, a big river in the state there's a lot of fishing pressure. There's pretty much every night in the springtime you could go to the river and find people fishing, and a lot of times they were doing things that they probably shouldn't be doing. There's a lot of regulations to the use of different kinds of bait, things like that, or going over limit on fish, which was very common in these high use areas. So one day, I think it was Memorial Day weekend actually, I set up on the river, and typically we try to watch from a distance just so we kind of take everything in. So I was watching from a distance and using my spotting scope and watching this father and a son, and they're catching fish, and I can tell that the fishing was decent that day, and I watched them go over limit. So they caught too many fish. So where I was sitting to watch, it took me a little while to get to my truck to get back to where they were on the other side of the river. And as I did it as fast as I could, and as I got to where they should be, they were actually driving out. So again, being a pretty new game warden, I was like, oh man, I don't know what I can do. Can I stop this vehicle? Do I have enough to stop it on the road? I didn't know. So I turned around and I literally followed the vehicle about 35 or 40 miles.
Oh man!
On the road to where they finally stopped on a dirt road, and I thought, there we go, I can actually get out and talk to them. So I followed them into like 3 different towns, and finally stopped them. Got out, talking to them, interviewed them, found out they're over limit. It was great. I wrote them both tickets. Thought I was the best thing in the world. And so I told my sergeant after the case after, and he couldn't stop laughing, because I probably did have enough to stop the vehicle earlier, but I guess the same outcome happened. I just used a little more gas getting there. ironically, in that story, we ended up having a trial with both of those individuals, and they pled guilty eventually. But shortly after, I caught the son of the father-son team baiting deer, and I wrote him a ticket for that. About a month after that happened, he actually got killed before I'd even submitted the ticket into the court. So it was actually a kind of like a bar fight thing. Very, very unique. I've never had that happen either, where I've got a ticket that I had to write a report for, and I find out in the news that the person died of a bar fight. So I guess I just kind of, I didn't turn the ticket in. I don't know. It's kind of interesting. But same crew.
My first night hunting case as a trainee, the guy we got had cancer. And it was terminal cancer. He wanted to kill another deer, so he decided to kill it at night. So we did put his date up a little further because
yeah, you got to do what you got to do to
exactly.
hold people accountable. But at the same time, it's interesting dealing with. I mean, again, it goes back to that kind of that frequent flyer thing. And
this guy was a great guy, and again, we joked about it. We're like, well, we're going to have it in, 2 weeks from now. So just you got to be ready. So, and he was good. He was, once we got him, you got me. Although he was gotten pretty good, and that's another story for another day that I'm saving with my mentor. That I was with a trainee, and that was as a trainee. It was pretty awesome, great for me. Great. So, but no, that's great. Yeah, you've had some memorable cases, and I think that it shows your longevity. With how many years on?
12.
12. So, and it's kind of fun when you start off and you're young, you're excited, and you're tearing it up. And duck hunters in boxer shorts. I mean, that's
that was a good one.
You can't even make this stuff up.
So So
it just cracks me up when I'm going through these pre notes, and I'm starting to laugh by the titles. So.
Yeah, I tried to caption those so they caught your attention, but
yeah, you did.
So I mean, basically, it was interesting because. Again, working something that you think you're going to be working deer hunters, and all of a sudden your mindset and your plan shifts, and that happens all the time as a game warden. And this particular night, I was actually trying to find a bow hunter, a deer bow hunter that I thought was hunting late. So I was set up in this field area, and all of a sudden I start hearing shotgun blasts way down in the back of the fields, and I'm thinking, boy, that's. And for migratory waterfowl, you have to the legal shooting time is actually sunset. It's not in Maine. We give people a half an hour after for other big game. So I'm watching my clock and I'm thinking that's sunset, and then the volleys of shots kept happening and kept happening. I decided after a certain amount of time that hey, I need to go see what's going on. So I got back in my truck and I drove down to the back of these fields, and by this point it's pitch dark. I'm kind of sitting there. I found their vehicle, but I'm not sure exactly what's still going on. So a few minutes later, I see some people walking up through a cut cornfield, and they're dragging a kayak. One of the guys is dragging a kayak. So thinking, oh yeah, they're definitely duck hunting. They were duck hunting in this bog down below the fields. As they get a little closer, I see there's a dog running around with them as well. So I start talking to one of the guys, and I look down, and the guy dragging the kayak's in his boxers. Nothing else. And I'm thinking, boy, that's strange. You don't see many duck hunters wearing boxer shorts. So
was it at least warm out?
No, it's October in Maine. It's really not warm. And but I could tell he was soaking wet, absolutely soaking wet. So I'm talking to these guys, and I'm kind of telling, hey guys, this is an issue. You guys have been shooting really, really late, and I'm getting licenses and getting information. And I finally look at the guy in the boxers. I said, what's your deal? I said, I mean, are you were you the retriever? Like, did you have to go in and get the ducks? And he kind of hung his head, and he's like, I got a little wet. And I'm thinking, yeah, you got a little wet. So he stripped his clothes off, and that's how he showed up. I just thought it was kind of funny. And
his buddies weren't busting his chops either, were they?
No, and again, they were. And again, it was one of those things where you deal with good people that make mistakes, and down the road, years down the road, one of the people in this group became a deputy sheriff. Great guys. All of them. Great guys.
Yep.
But it was just one of those things we can joke about it now. Like, hey, remember that time Remember that time you guys were duck hunting in your underwear?
Yeah.
And it's a big joke. But.
Yeah, I'm sure they think it's real funny. and absolutely, the good people make mistakes, and they come out, and here's a perfect example of a guy's in law enforcement now, and you get to bust his chops on a regular basis. So
exactly.
That's awesome. So, and we certainly work with those guys, and I think a lot of them, some of my best friends are troopers, local police guys, and we get their backup from them and from us, and especially more in those rural areas all the time.
There's no question. I mean, the partnerships and the relationships you form with other law enforcement. That's why, I think we, as game wardens, we have the best of both worlds, really, because you make those connections, you make those partnerships and friendships, but at the same time, you get to do things that are, in my opinion, more fun than traditional law enforcement.
I would agree. You're doing something you love, and you love being out there in the woods, and you love working with the people that love being out there in the woods.
Right.
So we got to keep the guys that make mistakes. We got to catch them making mistakes, and we got to get the guys that are really out there to destroy the resource and catch those guys too. So it's
and unfortunately there is still a segment of the population that
absolutely, and usually it comes with money. If there's money attached to something, I think that gives people opportunity to destroy a resource over money. So
anytime there's money involved, it seems for sure.
That's been my observation. So, but smelting was a big deal. It was funny. I did an interview with a warden. It was a warden over 20 years ago when he retired. He's been 20 years, and smelting in New Hampshire has dwindled because we don't have smelts. But one of your cases here is smelting on Kingsbury Pond, and that was kind of something I want to hear about, because I think smelting is
and
maybe some people don't even know what smelting is.
Right. So a lot of people, it's kind of a traditional thing, and it sounds like it was in New Hampshire, and maybe still is to an extent. But a lot of people in the springtime, early spring, in Maine will go to brooks and things like that in the mouths of ponds and lakes and usually use a dip net and catch smelts, which is it's a form of bait fish, a small form of bait fish. A lot of people love eating them.
They think they're tasty.
And they also use them sometimes for bait for salmon fishing and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And smelts are a really important bait fish in the state of Maine. So we have to protect those fish, and we put a lot of effort in the springtime on these smelt runs, and some of them are closed runs, some of them are open to dipping, but there's still regulations,
because that's when somebody can do a serious job to the resource, because if they keep dipping, you're talking hundreds and hundreds of smelt, and food source for other fish,
and to your point earlier, it's a commercial thing as well. So a person with a regular fishing license can go to a smelt run and catch a certain amount of smelts and go home, and that's fine. But there's also commercial fishermen that will go and it's part of their business to sell smelt. So we do have to kind of watch for both. But in this particular on this particular smelt run, there's the actual brook going into the pond is closed, but you can actually smelt in the pond. Typically what we do is put like demarcation lines somewhere in that pond to show that, all right, you're out of the mouth of the stream, this is the legal distance.
This is where you can start smelting
here. This is where you can start, because most people obviously would want to be as close as possible. So this is a really popular run. There's people everywhere when the smelts are running, because it's only for a short period of time. And so, we've made a plan to go down there, kind of plain clothes, try to blend in. That's really one of the best ways to work them sometimes is to kind of be there when they're there.
Be one of them.
Yeah, kind of try to blend in. So I had a guy that he's a game warden now, but I had a person riding with me that day that wanted to be a warden, and so he was part of this plain clothes type thing. So him and I went down on the river and in the pond, and we were fishing. We were smelting just like everyone else. Shortly into the night, the smelts were coming okay, but it wasn't great. And all of a sudden, you can start hearing little grumblings, and pretty much everyone knows the laws, knows the regulations on these smelt runs. And so anyone if they see them bending those regulations or doing something wrong, they're typically not happy, because they're trying to play by the rules. So I start hearing little grumblings amongst the group of, so there's someone up in the brook, blah, 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 blah. I'm trying to be kind of inconspicuous, and and back myself out of the stream, out of the pond, and there's people everywhere. And I've got hip waders on. I didn't have chest waders. I just had hip waders. I was right up to the top of them. I had stuffed my portable radio down my hip wader. So,
oh boy!
So I could.
I can almost see where this is going.
If I had to use it, I could use it. It's probably not going where you think, because again, it's not. But it was just kind of funny that I the whole time I had that there, and these guys had no idea. So the guy I was with, the ride along, I gave him the radio. Once I finally got off the bank into the darkness, I gave him the radio. I said, I need you to go up, turn it on, and tell the other warden that was up the road in the truck to get down here. So I'm trying to hike through the woods to find these guys that are on the brook. And I finally find them, and they've got a milk jug basically with the top cut off, and there's smelts pouring out of this milk jug. They've caught so many smelts. I mean, the stream was just black with smelts. So all they had to do was dip a couple times, and they had their way over their limit. Plus, it's closed. So, anyways, long story short, the guy that was with me finally figured out how to turn the radio on. Finally got the warden that was up the road, which took a little bit of time. And I'm hoping the whole time that these guys aren't leaving. And it was kind of one of those things, but we caught them. And it was just, working smelt fishermen is something that's is fun and it's rewarding. And
Did they ever really suspect you as being a warden or anything?
No. So what happened was what we typically try to do is not really burn that. Mm-hmm. So we're able to pull him off the bank, kind of just let him know very inconspicuously that, hey, law enforcement. And we sent him up to the road. I think we were pretty successful that night in not burning us.
Yep.
Sometimes we don't get as lucky, but you really have to be creative sometimes when it comes to catching some of these folks, because some people have done these things for a long time and they're good at it and they're comfortable. Yes. And you have to kind of think outside the box.
Absolutely.
That was just a fun time that night, and I remember that the warden, the ride along that was there that night, kind of talked about it years after when he became a warden, saying, geez, that was kind of the night that hooked me on being a game warden, because
it was exciting.
He got to see something really exciting. We caught some guys. We were in plain clothes. The whole thing, you kind of, I don't know, if you're into that kind of stuff, I don't know how you can't like it.
Oh, yeah. No, I think the best thing is catching guys doing something, and timing is everything, but when you're there for that purpose and it happens, man, it's just you always get these questions from sportsmen. I don't know how you can be a game warden because it's during hunting season. I'm like, that poacher's my 10-point buck, man.
Yep.
I'm constantly hunting.
Yep. Yeah, and we kind of joke about a lot of people do say that, geez, I don't know if I want to be a game warden because you never get to hunt and fish anymore and things like that. It's really not true, especially in today's day and age. You still get your time that you can go recreate and do the things that you want to do. But to me personally, you're immersed in it all the time now as a game warden. You're into, depending on the season, you're in full hunting mode in the fall. Transition into the ice fishing, snowmobiling season, things like that. You're involved in those activities way more than you ever would have been if you worked a different job.
Absolutely.
And to your point, I hate to use this term, but the hunting aspect, it kind of changes to trying to find the people that are violating versus finding that game that you're looking to hunt. So, to me, I think much like you, that the excitement that you get from making a good case and catching those people that have been doing it is, to me, it exceeds shooting any deer that I've ever shot.
Yeah, no doubt. Benefiting a resource for long term too by doing that.
Yeah.
I think it gets your end goal, and
right.
You achieve the small goals and then their big goals in long term. So that's pretty awesome. And would you have any suggestions? A lot of guys listen to this to get like little tips to how can I be a game warden in Maine? You have some advice for them right now? Yeah,
sure. That's a great thing. I think we mentioned it earlier. There's going to be a lot of opportunity in the next few years to be in conservation law enforcement, probably in many states. Maine is no exception. We're going to have opportunities for hiring, and I think that depending on where you are, what stage of your life you're in, and where you're at with your experience level, I think a couple of the biggest things that we're looking for as game warden candidates is some knowledge, some background in the outdoors, fishing game, some experience in that, hunting, fishing, trapping, things like that is really important. And then the other thing we're looking for is people that can communicate well with others. Communication skills is a really, really important thing in any law enforcement, but really, really important as a game warden. You talk to people all the time. I'm sitting here at the Moose Lottery, and I'm watching one of our deputy wardens talk to a guy at the OGT trailer in front of me here. It's just so important to have those skills and continue to improve on those. Work ethic. I mean, a lot of what we do is by ourselves. You know, we want to hire people with really strong work ethics that are motivated to do the job, that are passionate about protecting fish and game and protecting the people that are out there recreating. I think those are some of the big topic areas that we're looking for. We don't really want the person that's the absolute expert at everything, because if you think you know everything now, you probably aren't the person we want to hire. You know, you need to be willing to learn some things. You're going to learn, you're going to change your way, how you do things over time. I mean, it's exciting that we're going to have some of these opportunities, but at the same time, it's really important that we are doing our best to hire the right people and get those really qualified applicants into our agencies. So,
well, that's great. So, and I think you hit it on the nail on the head. Work ethic, work hard, and get involved with everything that's wild. So
yeah. I mean, that just having that diverse outdoor background is really important. And just to touch on that, I mean, what we see as game wardens is that you're enforcing the outdoor, the fish and game laws, the recreational vehicle laws, and having a familiarity with those types of activities is so important and beneficial to enforcing those laws. Because when you come up on someone that's violating a law pertaining to deer hunting, and you've never deer hunted before, you don't really have the feeling. You can't talk that activity, and that's really important out in the field and doing what we do. So,
yeah, no doubt. Actually, took one of our trainees turkey hunting for his first time last year. So I'd never been turkey hunting and didn't have a license or anything, but he went with me.
Sure.
And I ended up, calling in a turkey and shooting a turkey. So he got that experience. He got how the hunter goes about it.
Yeah, I mean, and it's so important to know that activity and know if you have to interview someone about a turkey hunt, you can at least remember that.
Right.
Oh, okay, that's probably, you can picture that in your head going on versus really not knowing anything about it.
Right,
So.
and my hat's off to his field training officer for doing that, because he said, "Hey, Lieutenant, you're going out turkey hunting. Can you bring Rob?" So I'm like, "Yeah, absolutely,
that's great. Yeah, you can always continue to learn. And
then when you stop, then you're in trouble.
Yeah.
So for sure, we get involved with so much as game wardens. Here we are doing an interview today, promoting Operation Game Thief, International Wildlife Crime Stoppers, and but the criminal side of things is some of this wildlife stuff we get involved with is criminals are involved in it. Some pretty hardcore criminals, and one of your first hunting incidents you ever had was a drug murderer. So that's pretty intense.
Yeah. So I mean, I think it's probably becoming more and more common, if I had to guess, with some of the crossover between different kinds of crime and fish and game crime. We see it a lot. We see, drug activity combined with fish and game crime. We see, thefts and burglaries that are sometimes connected to fish and game. So it's the lines have blurred considerably. It's not, what the state police in Maine deal with and what we deal with is so much hand in hand. The same people are doing the same things. The first perceived hunting fatal incident that I had was I got a call from the dispatch, and they said, we have a possible hunting incident in North Anson. And so that's, again, brand new. I'm thinking, all right, this is great. It's 9:00 at night, and I'm raring to go. I don't care. I have nothing at home, so grab my stuff and head over. And there's a bunch of troopers there, and there's a bunch of law enforcement. They've taped off the area, and I'm walking up to the scene, and there's this vehicle parked. It's like back down on this woods road, just on the edge of the tar. There's a dead guy sitting in the driver's seat, and I'm thinking, it seems odd. I'm thinking, I don't understand how this could ever be a hunting incident. I'm not seeing I'm brand new, but I'm not seeing the connection.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm talking to some of the other law enforcement there, and they're saying, well, I think there's possibility that might have been someone from a tree stand, and it might have hit him. And I'm thinking, boy, that's stretching it again even for a new guy. Kind of looking at everything, and the guy had actually been shot at close range with a handgun, and it actually blew his glasses. I mean, it was a mess. But anyways, it ended up being, after investigating the whole thing, it ended up being a drug deal that had gone bad. But it was just kind of interesting that originally they thought it potentially could have been a hunting incident, probably based on where it was more than anything, just rural area. Yeah, so
And sometimes we like to hand heavy cases off.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Oh, this isn't mine. It's theirs. It's
Yeah.
That's a hunting incident. I don't want to have a murder.
It kind of became a joke a little bit after. It's like, man, you guys are stretching it on that one. But
no doubt.
We do. I mean, we do. We work so close with, especially the state police, on a lot of these major crimes things. More so for some of our resources in like search and rescue and things like that. We have things that, some cold cases, some missing persons, newer missing person cases that we usually, go and assist in that mode quite frequently in Maine. So it's a great partnership. That's kind of where our expertise is in the search and rescue and finding people and so we can help.
Because we're
out.
the police in the woods.
Yep.
That's what we do. Any searches stand out with you? I know.
Yeah, I mean, we've had...
You guys had some high-profile ones in your past,
I know a lot of people know about Jerry Largay and that search and how long it was a long search and things. And I wasn't directly involved in a lot of that search based on geography, but, we've had some other pretty high-profile, long searches that I have been more involved with. And just some of those, obviously, we talked about the good and the bad times and things like that, but... some of those are happy endings. Some of them aren't so happy, depending on the situation. But we had a search a couple years ago now that lasted for an extended period of time up in the kind of the north. I guess you'd call it the northern part of the state. There was a guy that had some early signs of dementia that drove down into this road system, a dirt road system that's pretty intricate, and there's a lot of roads and would definitely be easy to get turned around or lost in. We never found him until later on in the fall, and finally, someone actually that was on a tractor that was up higher that they could see down over a bank spotted something shining off the sun shining off of something, and it turned out that it was the windshield of this vehicle that he ended up backing down over like an old wood yard chopping that had been cut off, and the vehicle was tucked in on the wood line, and honestly, it was just a very lucky situation that the vehicle was seen. But we recovered that victim, and unfortunately that a lot of times that is the case, but at the same time it brings closure most of the time to families,
or at
least some closure that
they know what happened,
that their their loved one or whatever is brought back to them, which is part of our job. It's not a fun part sometimes, but it's an important thing. So we have a lot of that. I mean, we have a lot of searches every year.
Yeah, no doubt. Bring you back to hunting though. Closed season deer case in March. So.
Oh yeah. So we don't get many of those. Typically, we've talked about, we have a lot of we put a lot of time and effort into the hunting activities in the fall. From and all the hunting seasons when they're open, but we don't get a lot of calls about hunting activities in March. The ironic part
that's a rabbit.
Well, yeah, it's true. Yeah, that's a whole nother day. But yeah, so the ironic part about this call in particular was that we actually had our 130th Warden Service anniversary celebration that night that this happened, which was down on the coast, a ways from where this happened. So the next morning, I got this information. I didn't get it until the next day, but someone called and said, "Hey, listen." Actually, it was an OGT complaint. So the call came in through Maine OGT,
nice.
and a coworker of one of the suspects had called and said that basically they were talking about killing these deer the night before on a certain road and things. So I started putting things together, and again, long story short, we interviewed some people. We were able to determine that there were 2 suspects, and they killed 2 deer. And obviously, if you're from Maine or you know about Maine, the month of March is kind of an important month for deer in particular, because it's kind of that shoulder month of we're getting out of the winter, but it's still cold, and sometimes we still have a lot of snow, so it's really hard sometimes on deer. And we're obviously killing them at night doesn't give them much of a chance.
Right.
They're pretty weak, things like that. So one of the suspects admitted to doing what they did. The other one didn't. I suspect probably because he's a felon, he didn't want to admit that he was there that night. But
Did your other suspect include him in his admission?
Oh yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. So it was kind of one of those things where I pretty much knew what happened. I just didn't quite have it on that guy. So, and again, we go back to frequent flyers. The one that didn't admit to the night hunting case back then, this past fall, we actually got him for felon in possession of a firearm. So things come around, and
absolutely.
I may or may not have said something to the effect back in the March case about that we'll probably meet again at some point, and I was pretty excited last fall. So it was great.
Yeah, no doubt. I've had that same experience where I think my phrase is, there is a God. There is a God.
There's something. I remember it was something to that effect, probably a little different.
Get that, lost one. And
that sounds good for a podcast.
It does. It does, absolutely. So I just wanted them to know that it all comes around sooner or later, because we may not get you that time, and it just makes my skin cringe, the ones I didn't get. And one of these things, I'm going to try to approach some guys that I didn't catch and say, hey, we're past the statute of limitations. You've changed. I know that. So you want to tell me all those stories? You want to tell me all the things I missed and put it out there? It
is interesting that you say that, Wayne, because there's and even as a current warden, there's certain relationships that you kind of establish over the time as in this job, that what you started at, it may be one thing, but as that evolves over time, some of the people that I would consider, good people, we probably didn't see eye to eye when I first started, and maybe even dealt with some of them in violations earlier on, but we've kind of gotten over that. Some of the people, it's actually very refreshing to see that some of those same people are those people now that would call you or stop you on the road and say, hey, listen, this isn't right.
Absolutely.
And so it does show that those relationships do change over time.
And we change too.
Yeah, you do. No question.
You remember the new kid that's in town is a new police officer and stops everybody? Doesn't matter who it is.
That's exactly right.
Certainly I was that game warden.
You start seeing the benefits of that community policing aspect more and more,
Absolutely.
I think, as time goes on.
Colonel likes to bring up the time I charged somebody for digging worms, inclusions, and aiding and assisting at taking them over a limit.
Hey,
I thought I was ingenious.
It sounds
Nobody
really
else
good.
did.
I mean, you dig really deep when you're new, and it's...
yeah, no doubt. And then the lieutenant looks at you, you did what? So to this day, I still get, that story comes up quite frequently. So he likes to tell that story. Here we are again. We're Cabelas in Maine for the Moose Lottery. Lots of people around. It's a live podcast, so you're going to hear people in the background. Pretty excited to be here with Sgt Aaron Cross of the Maine Warden Service. We've talked about a lot of stuff, his experience. We haven't talked about a lot of stuff too. He's got quite a forte here. These notes he gave me were just crazy. Which is thank you very much, Aaron. And we're gonna have to do it again. So maybe not you specifically, but I got to learn out. So podcasting's been new. I think it's really important that we get our message out especially with Operation Game Thief, Maine, New Hampshire. I told you before that I mimicked you guys because you've been so successful. 30 years coming up with Operation Game Thief. New Hampshire started off on the same foot. We faltered. We fell back to the state. It wasn't working. So now we have a nonprofit program again. We're up. We're running. We're helping out. We're helping to stop poaching.
Yeah, it's great. It's absolutely. I think that any state or agency, state, or whether it's in whether it's in the U.S. or Canadian provinces, I think that it's so important that you get involved with International Wildlife Crime Stoppers. It's been such a huge asset for Maine OGT and our state agencies to have those connections. You meet people at these conferences and the functions that happen throughout the country that are invaluable. Just like anytime you meet people from other states, you gain knowledge, you find out, what works for them, what doesn't, share things, and I think we're really making some huge steps forward with IWC, and I think it's only going to continue to grow.
Yep, no doubt. So, International Wildlife Crime Stoppers, we were hosted on their Facebook page today. Apparently they couldn't hear very well, and they probably, well, like I said, we'll work out the bugs in the future, so I hope they'll let me host again.
Oh, yeah,
but,
I'm sure.
Certainly bring some attention to it. That's important. We get the conference coming up again, so I'm headed there. Hopefully do a lot of podcasts. Lewis Rather, our executive director, what a dynamic individual. I'm looking forward to doing a podcast
Great guy, absolutely.
So, Chris Simmons. So Sergeant Chris Simmons is on my list. That'll be a fun one too. So
yeah, you better. I think you might want to block out 2 or 3 hours, maybe something like that.
And I've been doing that with different wardens because having lunch breaks and then doing a second one in the afternoon, so we can do double up. So that might have to be a Chris a full
maybe a
day.
Chris day, yeah,
a Chris day. So certainly, I really appreciate your time, and hopefully because we want to put that softball game out August 3rd, and it's going to benefit IWC, OGT New Hampshire, Maine, and Make-A-Wish. So it's quite a combination.
Yeah, it's great. We've the last 3 years actually that we've done a Maine OGT has done a benefit softball game in Belfast, which is close to where I am, and Sergeant Simmons as well. So we've been doing this fundraiser with the Belfast High School softball and baseball teams, where we have a team of game wardens play against the high school softball and baseball kids, and I think that's been a huge hit.
A good local outreach on both
obviously
sides.
We're trying to make this bigger event in Portland in August, but at the same time it's given us a kind of a framework to work off of, and the benefits have been great. I mean, we make relationships with the students and the staff at the high school. The communities in those areas have just been, they've latched onto it, and they've been very supportive. We've been able to raise some great money for Make-A-Wish and Maine OGT through that game. So it's been fun, but we're really hoping that the August game is going to be on a whole nother scale as far as size and participation. And
you got two Northwoods laws competing. Maine Northwoods Law versus New Hampshire Northwoods Law. It doesn't get any better. Because we love to play hard. We love to work hard, and we're all competitive people. I know that. So, you're competitive for sure. Were you involved with that Tough Mudder they did?
Yeah, I did one of those.
I think we sent some people over there, didn't we? We had some
New
Hampshire.
Yeah. 1 year we
Major
actually
Wimsat went over, and
we filmed it on Northwoods Law actually 1 year. And it was Maine versus New Hampshire in that. Yeah,
and we actually won, but didn't they cut it out and made you guys win or something? I'm
not so sure that's the way it happened. I do know, I can tell you that there was people that did get lost at some point on the course. Won't tell you if it was Maine or New Hampshire.
Yeah.
I think that everyone that watches Northwoods Law probably knows who actually won, but we'll just.
So it's going to be a little bit like that. So hopefully they'll be there to film it, and we'll have some good fun and some good competition and raise money for Make-A-Wish, New Hampshire, Maine OGTs, and International Wildlife Crime Stoppers. Get our message out there more and benefit it and have a good time. So thanks for your time, Aaron. It's always a pleasure to hang with you, and look forward to the future. So
we'll see you in Nevada.
Please join me, Game Warden Wayne Saunders, and other game wardens on our adventures, protecting wildlife, saving lives, and having fun, all while serving the public and the natural resources of our planet. Listen to the tales and experiences of those who work in the outdoors while being entertained with stories about encounters with poachers, wildlife investigation, murder investigation, near-death experiences, search and rescue missions, wildlife interactions from game wardens around the country and around the world. When I retired, I realized I couldn't let go of that legacy, but rather wanted to share the passion, the commitment, and the stories of those men and women that call themselves game wardens. This is Game Warden Wayne Saunders, and this is Warden's Watch.